All right, hello and welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another and with the lovely Jessica. We're working together today and playing. Jess is joining us from Yothera, and she is a clinical, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I always feel like there's more to add to this because you're a yoga teacher. And so will you just tell us a little bit about who you are really quickly, and then I'll go back into.
Sure. Yeah. So really quickly, I'm a licensed clinical mental health therapist. I've been in private practice for 10 years. And then I'm also a Phoenix Rising yoga therapist and a yoga teacher.
Yeah. So I just like it. All of that. It's like the full package. And so the cool thing is Jess and I met, we met through YouTube basically a while ago, and we've been kind of playing with this back and forth, and we have a lot of similarities and work in similar ways through different modalities, but also some of the same modalities, which is a lot of fun. And I find it fascinating when I work with people that are in, well, not even just the health profession. I'm just going to call what you're doing in the health and psychology type profession. I've done videos with like Liz, and she's a physician's assistant. And it's always interesting to pull that in with a little bit of the esoteric and energetic and all of it, because it is all connected.
Yeah.
So I think more and more that's like becoming a recognition and a realization for people that there is more than just this 3D linear, I'm sick, go to the doctor, give me medication. You know, it's like everything's so interconnected.
Yep.
And I think what you do, Jess, is so important because you pull all of that in together. And so I just guess one of the things I've been noticing energetically, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the fact that we're in quarantine here. For the most part, I'm pretty fortunate. I'm someplace where it's pretty sunny, pretty warm, and I think people are taking it seriously, but I don't think that Florida really takes a lot of these things. It's like Florida and California are kind of like their own planets within the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, everybody kind of, and we're blessed because we do have the sunshine, but I don't know what's going to happen moving forward, because I do think there are people that are taking advantage of that, of course. You tell people, oh, you can go to the beach now, and all of a sudden you get all these kids that are on spring break.
Yeah.
And they're creating a problem for everybody else. But I guess I just want to talk a little bit about how are you kind of handling the quarantine? What have you noticed with your practice personally, but also your business? I think it's important to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's different. Like, what have you been doing differently? What have you discovered about all of that maybe could help others out there who have their own practices, whether it be teaching or any kind of modalities, but also then we'll go into a little personal. I think what happens is personally, then we discover things about ourselves too.
That's for sure. Yeah. Yep. So I've moved a lot to online, so I'm seeing all the clients on Zoom. But what I've noticed in people as I've moved to a Zoom platform is, I don't know what shifted. I don't know if it's because they're in their home environment or what, but they're more open to talking about more of the esoteric, energetic side of things. They want the clinical, they want the other stuff too.
Yeah.
But I've told Carrie this like briefly, but some of the things that I haven't felt as comfortable doing in a clinical session, such as like, doing some Akashic Records readings or some of like the light language that's been coming through, it's just that's starting to happen on a different platform on Zoom. Yeah. So maybe it's the electronics. I'm interested to see what you think about that, but I wonder if the energy of electronics is like, I don't know, encouraging some of this. And then some of my clients too have like started telling me more about some stuff that's been coming online for them. So it's interesting. It's not just me that's having this. It's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the fact that you're bringing that up, because I do feel like it's a mix of, I think it is a comfort level. Well, there's others that aren't comfortable being on camera, but they don't have to. They don't have to see themselves. They can just do voice and turn off the camera. And it's almost like them being in the comfort of their own home I think that is obviously, that's probably a big part of it. But also, I feel like, and I also do, I was told a long time ago by my guidance team that when you do this electronically, like what we're doing now energetically, granted, there's going to be people that watch this that feel the energy that we're sharing. And by the way, guys, we've already set our intention. We kind of did a little kumbaya before we got started on making sure that everything that comes through is in love and light so that energy can be felt. But also what we're doing is we are like sending that energy through the ethernet, through the internet, through this world wide web. And so I feel like it is sending that in, and I see it move energetically through electronics. It's really interesting. So yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. Yeah. But I also feel, and I'm sure you would agree with this too, that there is a mass awakening going on.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, things are being brought to people's awareness, and they're having more telepathy. They're having more aha moments. They're having more things come up that they maybe didn't see before or didn't hear before, or they saw it and it triggered something, an awakening within them. And now they've got someone like you that they can talk to and be comfortable bringing up those questions or talking about those realizations.
Yeah, and that's something that is kind of different about the way I feel like therapy is moving. I'm pretty well, I guess, well known as like a pretty non-traditional therapist, but kind of bridging both worlds. And I'm glad that more therapists are feeling like they can explore their own intuition and gifts and then be open with their clients about it, because then the clients, it's like permission for them to be more open too. And it's just so important that we can bridge both worlds. I think it's really important that we can.
Yeah, I think that absolutely. And I think that's been lost a long time ago. I always see this reference like it was cut off and it was patient client or, whatever it might be, that wall. Like I ask you a question and you respond, or so that's all old school. And it's not, and also, so when you mentioned, some of the things, so what are some of the things you're seeing? Now, I didn't even get into the Akashic Records with you. Ooh, we got to talk about that. That's exciting. So, because I know this is something that you mentioned is relatively, I wouldn't say new to you, because I think you've always had the access and the tools to do that, but you've been utilizing it more.
Yeah, and I just have to say that you have basically been a huge part of that awakening for me. So Carrie's amazing. You really have. She's awakened a lot of stuff for me. But one thing that Carrie told me maybe a few months ago to start doing with my clients is to do some, open the records for them before they even get there and do some writing around what comes through. Because what was happening is I was picking up on their energy anyway before they'd come in the door. And so I just started writing it down. And what ended up happening is it was pretty spot on, a lot of the things that they were coming in with, and then what they needed assistance with as well. So I've just been setting the intention to get into the records before they come to, now on a screen.
Right.
And then I've kind of branched out outside of that, and I'm gonna start just calling it Akashic Records readings, because some people want that as part of like a therapy session, but other people just want an Akashic Records reading. So,
and can you give some example? I mean, I could see how it could go both ways too. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I have so many different directions I want to go with that. Part of it is, so how do the people that are coming to you because I'll go back to that original question, that are coming for the more clinical aspect, are you just following your intuition and then saying, recognizing that they might be a little bit more open, or is it organically happening where they just ask the questions that are more esoteric and you're like, I'm really glad you asked that,
Well,
or both?
So something that you helped me figure out again a couple months ago was that when people book a session with me, it's like giving permission. It's like, you have permission to be in my energy field, and that is what that is. And so I get into their energy a little bit before a session, even if they don't ask me to.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it one way or another, but some of my clients are very open esoterically and they want to actually come in and talk about what came through. So it really just depends on the person. And
Yeah. And using your own discernment about what they're ready for and what they're not
yeah,
ready for.
exactly.
Yeah, which I think is huge because I do have, I write things down too. And I've been more and more open about sharing what I've written before I work with someone. But there are times when I'm like, ooh, are they ready for that? But inevitably, don't you find that somehow part of the conversation leads
Yeah.
back to what you wrote down and you're like, oh, okay, now I see why I wrote that down and how we can.
Yeah, and actually when that does happen, that tells me, like, it's almost like that's permission from my guides or their higher self to, like, hey, they're ready. They're bringing this up and that's a really big thing. So go ahead and share. And that's
Yeah.
when I just say, hey, by the way, because I don't hide it anymore. I don't hide that, I see, sometimes I'll see orbs or I'll see, I know that there's a spirit in the room or whatever. Like, I just don't hide it anymore. As long as it's not going to be harmful, it depends on the client, but yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want the client just get up and go, all right, you're crazy. Obviously, you're the one that needs the help and not me.
Right, exactly.
Somebody
Yeah.
that's really, really embedded in a 3D mentality, obviously, you just go back to your own original training,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is through school and through experience in that field. So I would like to kind of go into that a little bit and talk a little bit about the Akashic well, there's so much. So we'll go a little bit into the Akashic records in just a minute because I kind of have a few little pieces of information I'd love to delve into about that. But before we move on, part of me is going, what are you seeing as a common denominator? I always bring this up lately as far as subjects or things that you've been seeing revealing themselves or questions that are being brought up, not only with clients, maybe with yourself, maybe with friends,
Yeah.
that, is kind of like a theme. Anything?
Oh yeah. The first thing that popped into my head was people want to talk about sexuality.
Yeah.
And they do. I mean, and it's not in the form of tantra really. They just want to talk about sexual trauma and I think why this is happening is there's actual space for a lot of this stuff to come up now and for them to really have time to process it, and they want to process it. So I'm involved in 2 Facebook groups that specifically talk about this. One's called Therapy with a Cherry on Top. It's with Denise. She's
Oh,
also a
that's cute.
therapist. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just about sexuality, but we're talking about edgy stuff. But then there's another one, it's a book club that's just for women, and it's talking about how to own our pleasure, but not just our pleasure, our voice. It's more about this. It's actually just all about it's time to speak. It's time to be honest. So.
I love the fact that you brought that up. So I would love so this obviously because I was and when I ask these things because I haven't done a little Zoom play like this in a while.
Okay.
Well, it's been about a week or so, 2 weeks since I get out of practice, and I'm like, why am I being guided to go back to that before I jump right into the Akashic records? So even my little brain likes to try to categorize everything and keep us on. But the funny thing is, the whole sexuality. So the divine feminine, right? It is such a subject. It's been a subject, I think, for the whole year, for the whole last year. Yep. Although I think the previous year was a little bit having to do with that divine masculine as well. And I mean, of course, there is that balance between the two. But I love the fact that you're talking about the voice.
Yeah.
The throat. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. So what are you seeing that are you thinking or feeling that when they're talking about these sexual traumas or maybe experiences that they're not comfortable with or whatever, it just opens up that throat, that ability to speak their truth. But I feel like there's more to it than just that. It's not just about trauma, right? It's about being able to be comfortable in their sexuality.
And if we're looking just at an energetic perspective, like my understanding is that the sacral and root chakra are directly connected to the throat. So if you want to heal those areas, feeling safe and like all of that is connected to being able to ask for what you want, say no, set boundaries. And it's so basically how you start to heal those areas is you begin to speak about them.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do anything about it. You don't even have to start acting differently, but to start speaking about it is the first step in healing it.
Yeah.
So, and I think telling a different story too is important, and kind of overcoming the victim story and moving into a sovereign new story.
Oh, got goosebumps.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that is so important right now because I'm not going to get into a lot of the things that I've been kind of all the rabbit trails I've been pulled into recently, but maybe we'll talk about that in a different video. I don't want to necessarily go into the whole trauma specifically, but not only is there being on an energetical level, from my perspective, so much trauma that's being brought up right now into a truth, people talking about it, people communicating about it, not only people that have been traumatized, people that have witnessed it. We're all kind of bearing witness to some things that are being revealed right now, and we're also needing to talk about it so that we can process those emotions. You know, if something happened in to a family member, for example, or a friend, or so that's the trauma aspect of it. But I think it's so important, that ability of being able to feel safe in order to talk about. And it's not even trauma. It's like some women who maybe don't understand their own, they don't know how to be in touch with their own sexuality, you know, or, and I don't mean that on a necessarily physical platform either, although it can be physical as well, you know. And it's interesting, I will share, I actually, this week, I always see these synchronicities whenever I connect with whoever I'm connecting with. And 3 nights ago, I had a dream about this. So I've had 2 women. I had a session with somebody. Her name is Carla, and I actually am going to share your guys' information later because I think you'll get along famously. She's a doula, right? Works with, and I never say these things right, but she works with like placenta, and she works with like the female energy. So the night before I had a session with her, I dreamed, and this is so funny that we're talking about this. That's the one subject you bring up. And I dreamed that I was singing, doing light language and doing sound harmonics. And in my dream, I can see what that looks like. Symbols and movements and plasma. And my guides, the people that were telling me this, I was wrapping this energy around other people. And the guides were pointing to the sacral chakra, to the divine feminine, saying, this is where it needs to come from. And in my dream, I was like, you know, it was a dream. I was like, what are you talking about? There? I actually could see in my dream through X-ray vision, the female parts through the person that was trying to teach me this. And I was like, okay, I get it. And I'm seeing these patterns emerge, that this is an ongoing process. It's not like you just do it and it's done. We have to be in our truth and sovereignty from the root, from the sacral area, center, divine feminine womb. Yeah. All the time. Yeah. It's a new way of being.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like Mother Earth and how much she's healing right now, and how symbolic that is, you know, for us to connect to her as part of that healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's the womb, you know, the womb. She's the mother. You know, we're in that. So as we heal one another and as we voice and speak our truth, of course, yeah, we connect with the earth. And so how would you say that, you know, somebody that's going through that process, you know, what are some of the things that they talk about, or what are some of the practices that you can suggest for them to fully balance that a little bit?
Well, one thing that I can say is, as we're talking about this right now, is I do have them connect to Mother Earth every day. So I have a meditation that I give them around grounding to Mother Earth every day, in a very specific intention to connect those parts, you know, the root and the sacral chakra, to her, as a way to alchemize some of that energy that needs to be healed. So sending it to her and then bringing back, you know, energy from her. So it's a really simple thing, you know, that people can do every day.
Yeah. I love that. It's beautiful. And the thing about that is I think a lot of times we overcomplicate things, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yep.
It's like, let's just set our intention to connect with earth, womb to womb, crown to crown. Like we're all one with our you said alchemize, I think. I mean, we're chemicals. We
Yeah.
have all of the elements that Mother Earth has. If we start to recognize that and set that intention daily, every
Yeah.
day, it isn't something that we can just do here and there and then we wonder why we've lost track and don't feel grounded.
Right. Right. And then, another thing that's really easy that I'll have people do is choose one way that they can speak their truth that week that's edgy. So if they have a partner, it's just about like, hey, what are you not saying that maybe you could practice saying, and we'll maybe role play it a little bit around. But that, that gets the voice involved. And then it's also tracking to see that they're safe, so that their nervous system, doing a check-in after they speak that edgy thing, that they check in with their nervous system, and it's like, oh, I am safe. That didn't kill me,
Yeah.
Because it's like building trust with it. We have to build trust in our voice.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how sometimes, have you ever had a situation where you're so afraid and you don't want to tell this person, and then you build up so much fear around it, and then you say it and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. I think sometimes we build up this fear, or we put all of these thoughts and judgments around what people are going to think about us if we say how we feel. And that just creates that anxiety.
Yes. It's like our inner child that's like, afraid still.
Yeah, we want to be liked, and we want people to understand us, and we have that fear of people not understanding where we're coming from. And part of this is, I think, from my perspective, in that sovereignty is not worrying about it. People are not necessarily going to agree with us or get where we're coming from.
That's such a good point. Yep. And not needing them to.
Exactly. Like, this is what I need to say because I need to say it in love and light and, in a non-judgmental way, and here you go. I love that. Something edgy. So, so back to, I'm laughing right now because I have like my little library in front of me, and it never fails. I have all these random crazy books. A lot of them I've gotten as gifts. Some of them I've bought along the journey. And I had a tendency, I would go to a bookstore, especially a used bookstore, and I'd walk in and I'd be like, all right, Spirit, what book should I pick today? And inevitably, I would pick the weirdest books.
Oh my God.
And this one was a gift. And right as I was saying that, it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, which I think a lot of people have read. I actually didn't read the whole book. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. And it's by Mark Manson. So I'm just saying that because as soon as I said that and you were saying, and don't worry about it, I looked up and I saw that book. So
yep.
that might be a good book for somebody out there. I don't know. So when we're talking about going back into this space of, so you've been seeing a lot of the divine feminine and people talking about it and how the throat is deeply connected with the root, feeling safe to speak our truth, and the sacral divine feminine. And we could do a whole video just on that. Really.
Yep.
I mean, it is so pretty much infinite there, especially with the layers that we could go into. Maybe we will do that down the road. But what are some other things that you've been seeing? Any common denominators or things? Maybe having also to do, like, for example, with the coronavirus and being on quarantine. I think going back into that divine feminine, I think that safety, right, is a big part right now, is what I'm seeing. People having that need to feel safe.
Yeah.
What else, though?
I would say, the theme around feeling isolated is coming up. But the interesting thing about that is, how do I say this? It's like, yes, we're isolated, but it's so divinely orchestrated because we're supposed to feel our own energy so we can wake up right now. And so it's almost like, I just did a video with Denise yesterday about this, of like some of the key themes of waking up, or like we did one on coming out of religion because we both left the Mormon church. That's a whole nother story. But basically part of it, of leaving any kind of structure, is being isolated. So both of us had lost family and friends, and we were all on our own, but that was such an important process in our waking up to something bigger. And so what I'm noticing is this theme of isolation, but that I want people to understand that that is something we all have to feel to take the next step into the bigger chapter ahead.
Yeah, so, I love that. Going within.
Yeah, and we're being forced to, but it's also so perfect for what's happening.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, yeah, I love that, because we are isolation, isol at ion, at the ionic, at the subatomic, at the, like, we are, my little guy, we are truly, it's almost like it gives us an opportunity to sit with those feelings. Like, okay, yeah. I feel isolated. And it's almost like a process. I call it, it's almost a little bit like a grieving process.
Yeah.
For me, that's what it's felt like. That's what I've been seeing in other people. And I even felt it a little bit myself. I went through kind of little miniature moments where I felt like I was going through some type of grieving process, like, oh, I can't do what I want to do, you know, or, oh, I'm forced to be by myself and work on this and work on that. But it kind of gives you, I feel like it now that I'm kind of in that flow, enough time has passed to where I've gone through those stages. I now feel like I can find my rhythm easier. Like, I know today I need to just read or do things and absorb like a sponge. And then other days it's like, okay, I feel the need to exercise and move and work through some of that energy. And I feel like sometimes we're so busy moving that we miss what our subconscious and our intuition is trying to tell us.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. And I like what you said about grief. I've noticed it being like kind of like ego deaths, and then you're grieving like people have been saying, I'm noticing that they're moving away from saying, I can't wait to get back to my normal life. And now people are saying, I am grieving that I don't think it's ever going to be the same again. And they're starting to come into that understanding that we're not going to just pop back to where we were.
Yeah.
And then people really sitting with that and then grieving what that means.
Yeah. And then I guess the next stage is acceptance, right? Or coming into acceptance and what now, and then what next, what comes after this stage. But we're not there yet. We don't worry about that, because it is about accepting where we are right now. And it is that constant little miniature. I like that death of the ego. And feeling isolated is something else that I think we could look at that in different layers and levels too, because it's good to feel and get to know ourselves, but recognizing that we really aren't. I mean, we have other people that we can reach out to, like what we're doing with this, finding ways to help other people that need a connection. It's almost like if you really do feel that isolated, but you're in, let's say, a city, a big city, because big cities are tough because you're used to being around a lot of people.
Right.
So then you could really feel isolated, even though maybe you never really did that much. It's just you were used to having that constant interaction of something, of some going to the grocery store and there's 10 other people in line, you know, or whatever it is. It's so odd, really, when you think about it. So if there's somebody that's feeling really isolated, I think for myself, it's about working through that, you know, not feeling so overwhelmed in isolation, really coming back to what makes me happy. Yeah. Of course, if other people are what makes you happy, then you might want to jump onto Zoom or some of these Facebook groups.
or maybe look at some codependent patterns, and just also putting that out there as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, we need each other, but you know, like
we might want to recognize that there's some patterns there that maybe we need to acknowledge.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah. And it's interesting too, or vice versa. I have had talked to a lot of people that are like, it's no
I love
different.
it. Yeah.
I've already been in isolation.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. There's a big like a microscope on the introverts that are like, yeah, I'm loving this, and now it's just permission.
It's so funny. So moving into that a little bit, so the isolation, obviously, tips for people that really do feel isolated. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it. Jump on a Facebook group, call up people that you love. I mean, this seems like it's common sense, but it isn't always. Sometimes people don't know that they're feeling grieve mode or depression.
That's a good point too. Like, and I do think labels are important, and when it comes to that, of like, if whoever's listening, if you're feeling like, oh, I might be grieving or whatever, it's okay to maybe go online and look up, common symptoms of depression. Not to be like, oh, I'm depressed and I'm going to label myself as that. But then if you have an understanding of you might be depressed, then you could go outside and go for a walk. You could own that you're depressed, and maybe you could take supplements like 5-HTP is really helpful for that. If you have anxiety, I went to the co-op the other day and I tried these lavender pills. So these pure lavender pills are actually really awesome for anxiety if you're feeling that.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. So there's other things, and a little bit of that is self-sufficiency. Taking that, having that ability to we do have control, and that's another word that's come up a lot, and I think a lot of people have recognized this. It's that feeling of, I don't have the control, somebody's taken the control away from me, I can't control this, I can't control that. And realistically,
right.
And acknowledging that rather than just fighting and butting your head up against it, I think is important. And so doing those things, like you said, look it up. What are some natural supplements, which you named a few, and that's awesome. Thank you for that. So anybody listening, there's a couple ideas. And also just using your discernment about what's right for you. For some people, if you can't go outside, it might be a good idea to throw on some music with birds and flowing water in the background. Order a fountain off of Amazon and have a little running water. Set up your own little Zen space with plants and dirt. And, my sister's working on a succulent wall right now. Things like that, to where you're interacting with the earth somehow, or water, setting up your own space so that, the first and most important thing is recognizing it, like what you said. Not necessarily labeling it, but what am I feeling? Oh, I think I'm a little depressed. Wow, okay. And not judging it.
Yep. And since we're talking about 3D things, I kind of want to mention this too, is if I thought I was depressed. I felt like there was something, and I may have been, but what I ended up doing is ordering blue blocker glasses.
Yes.
And I actually feel better. I don't feel depressed anymore. Like, I'm not wearing them right now, but I've been wearing them.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Like, it's so, if you're on a screen all day and you're not used to it, your brain's going to shut down.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I was actually planning on doing a video and just doing like a 5-minute, like, hey guys, don't forget about, and I totally forgot. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I've been wearing blue blockers. Obviously, I'm not wearing them now either, but I wear blue blockers every night when I'm watching TV. I have a pair in my living room, like in my little thing with the remote control. I have a pair by my bed, so that if I'm reading my phone before I go to bed, and I have a pair, I think they're on my, but I usually have a pair right by my computer.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I will say, they make a significant difference.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm so glad that you brought that up too, because there's something else I want to add to that. I listen to Dan Winters, who is like, I just absolutely cannot say enough good things about him. And I've talked about him so much because in my awakening and in my journey, all the stuff that I write, I looked back and I'm writing stuff that he's talked about. And I am not science savvy really at all, but apparently we're all plugging into the same channels through source, right? And he talks about the lighting as well. So fluorescent light bulbs, buy a grow light. Like if you're stuck indoors, and I actually had, there's light therapy. You can buy machine or small inexpensive equipment for light therapy.
Awesome.
And you might, so like there's certain things that they'll do like light therapy, but you could just buy
Like a
a
happy
grow.
light. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
They're called happy lights. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So happy lights. So you do know, yeah. And I read about those and grow lights. You know, granted, be careful what you buy because some of them come in weird colors. I ordered a couple and they're pink, but so now I have to order specifically type in white. But you can put those into your light bulbs in your lamps, and then when you're reading a book, you're not getting, you know, so bombarded with that blue light that is scientifically proven to basically suck the energy right out of us.
Yeah. And man, so many ideas are coming in like as we're talking, but I also recently did like a heavy metal detox cleanse to, you know, like there are all these ways that we do have control over how we feel that we can do at any point. You can order everything you need for a heavy metal detox and just do that. And
I love I love that you brought that up. That's important.
Yeah.
How did you feel afterwards?
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. And less heavy, you know, just not as inflamed, you know, it decreases inflammation. Yeah.
Also, if people are having a lot of ascension symptoms still, which I don't talk as much about because it's such a normal thing, a lot of people are experiencing ascension symptoms still. I call them that, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And doing these types of things like putting the blue blocker glasses on, doing a heavy metal cleanse, maybe doing a parasite cleanse through, you know, natural ways, oil of oregano. There's a lot of different things that you can add to help balance out and detoxify the body, especially because I also think that people, I know there's a lot of people that are drinking more, you know, alcohol, it's a common thing. I did it. I went to the store and I'm like, I don't want to run out of wine.
I know. I'm pretty sure everyone did that.
Yeah. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even hardly ever drink. And now I'm worried about having it so that I don't not have it. And I noticed when I went to the store, I mean, I saw all these little things. I'm like, well, if I'm doing this at this level, you know, I could see some people not even aware that they're doing that and acknowledging it, and foods too.
Yeah, definitely. So liver cleanses too.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not necessarily doing this, suggesting that you do this all at once.
Right. No, just tools.
Do it in little chunks and honor your body, because if you have some issues where you shouldn't be doing these things, obviously don't do that. But it is just be aware, like sometimes if you're not paying attention to those things, it's harder to recognize where, because sometimes we feel depressed. It's not necessarily that we're just, you know, why are we depressed? Maybe we're watching a lot more of the news than we usually do, which is a whole other subject. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the Akashic Records.
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of new at them, but
yeah, I love that. And you know what? I love the fact that you even said that, because the great thing about what how do I put this? Everybody has these gifts, and essentially sometimes we don't necessarily feel like we're experts, you know, when we just start tapping into them. And, you know, when I started I've been doing my videos for about a year now. I still don't feel like I'm an expert at anything.
Right. Are we ever really?
Right. But then, and it's funny because I look back at some of the things I wrote, and I've been guided to go back and share the things I wrote a year ago now. And I'm looking at what I wrote, and I'm like, I think I was writing about what's going on now a year ago. But at the time, I thought, this doesn't make any sense. And so I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people are tapping into things, and like light language, like weird sounds coming out of their toning starting to happen, drawing, all of this. And so yours is the accessing that Akashic Records, which is our divine birthright.
Yeah.
But I do feel that a lot of people do and just don't realize that they are. So how did you start recognizing, like, what do the Akashic records look like to you?
Yeah. So
Generally.
yeah, in general. Well, now what they look like is like I'm definitely able to understand when I'm in them and when I'm not. Where before, just to give a really brief backstory, about a year ago is when I started to be in them and didn't realize it. It was really freaking me out because I would have these symbols would be coming in, or like these like just well, I'd start to pick up on other people's energy, and I would think it was mine, but all sorts of like strange body sensations that would come and go really quickly, that I was like, I don't know, I just felt like I was going crazy, but I wasn't. And now that I know, because now when I read, that's what happens, is I'll see a symbol that I believe my guides show me because they know that I'll understand what it means. And then I'm learning how to translate the picture, or the minor pictures and images. And then sometimes I'll get body sensations, like I'll hear things, or I'll get obviously tingles, as you know, that's like a definite yes from the guide.
Yeah.
But you know, if there's something happening with the person specifically that I need to speak about and it's in the body, I'll get the sensation in the body. So yeah, and I wouldn't say I've been getting any kind of like past life stuff by any means that I know of, but it's mostly for something very specific that they bring into the session that they want to know about. So I usually just ask them to come with an intention or a question, and that helps guide me.
Yeah. And so what would you describe the Akashic records as being? Because I have my own concept, but my concepts are always a little different than other people's, and because I kind of have my own interpretation. But what would your interpretation be? Like, what is it kind of? What are the Akashic records? Like, what do they reveal, or what is in there?
Well, my understanding is that the Akashic records are basically records of all of your incarnations, like past, present, future, which is probably all happening at the same time, but all the different versions of you that you've incarnated as, and then also your soul purpose, and there does tend to be a theme of like why you come back, you know, of like you have a very specific gift or a what you're here to do that you've probably done in previous lifetimes and you're probably good at. So
yeah. And you mentioned when they set their intention, so it's almost like you're going into that particular record, so to speak, based around a particular energy of that intention that would most be suitable for what they need in that now moment. Is that kind of what, or whatever they're learning or experiencing?
Yeah, for me, that's where I have to go, because if I just open the records, there's way too much information, and I can't, for me, I can't process it. I'm not there yet. So I do have to have them start with something specific that gives me some guidance, and then I can tap in from there.
That's cool. So how about your Akashic records? Have you learned anything really, really?
I can't get in.
Isn't that funny? I love that. Yeah.
I can't. But I have two very, and you're one of them that can get into mine, and they're just absolutely always spot on. But I can't read my own.
Isn't that funny? I'm so glad that you said that, though, because it's so funny. Yeah, I didn't know that's what I was really doing per se, and then all of a sudden somebody was talking about them, and I'm like, I think that's what I'm seeing. Like. And it is, look, I've got goosebumps now everywhere. I love that. That's so funny. I'm like, maybe that's what I'm doing. But I never called it Akashic record reading, and I never called it. And it's interesting that you talk about that whole past life. Like, you're not really seeing, and I do think that happens in stages. Like, sometimes I don't see past either with people. I only see what's in that now moment. But usually that's what I set my intention to connect with, because you know, what is most needed for this particular individual in this now moment, because they might be asking me a question about their past life, and that may not be what is the most pertinent thing for what they need right now. And that's just my own perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of how I work. So if somebody's looking to get all about their past lives, I usually would say that I'm not the person for them to, that's not the information I provide. And I love the fact I couldn't see my own either, but I would, so I want to bring, what?
Can you now?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is for me, and I'm sharing this because it's important for us to kind of talk about our experiences and how we kind of came into this. Like, you had the kinesthetic and more of the visual.
Yep.
People, I mean, I've talked about this before, but people sometimes don't realize that they're getting downloads. They think it has to come like this flash, and that they're seeing something like you would see on a television set.
Right.
And it isn't always like that. And I love the fact that you brought up the symbols because I've recommended before that people watch the Golden Compass.
Right.
Because that alethiometer, it's like a symbol and it moves around and it's based on your own interpretation. So that's important to recognize too. So so when you see these symbols, okay, so let's go back. I got squirrel, a little distracted. But it's vast, right? It's past, present, future, above, below, everything.
Yep.
So when you've been doing this with people, what are some examples? Like what can you just give like a basic example of like what you see or?
Yeah, so let's see if I can come up with like a good example, a simple example. So, there's a woman, I've never met her before. She was the elderly mother of one of my clients, and she asked me a question about what she can do to be healthier. And I didn't know anything about her health. I didn't know anything, about her actually at all, except that she was my client's mother that I had never spoken about. And what came through was this picture of her lower legs and feet, and they were extremely swollen. They were really swollen, and they were like sore. And like in this picture I was seeing as she couldn't walk. And so I, just let her know what I was seeing, and that the message was that, she needed to first elevate and her feet, but also to actually move more. And it was really that simple. And I guess she ended up telling me that she has diabetes and she actually had swollen legs, and like she was having trouble trying to figure out medications. And so it's just, that's one example of it can be that simple.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the other thing too, back to keep it simple. Like it doesn't always have to be you're a galactic from Lyra. And sometimes I think that's really cool because it's cool to know that you're a galactic, you've got, but kind of a lot of us are from that if we really want to go there, because it's a whole other can of worms. But I think oftentimes we get, from my perspective, I've worked with a lot of people that get really caught up in these bigger than life, but we're in a body on physical form. And if we're not taking care of our physical form, that's where we have to start, because it's our vessel, it's our vehicle. So obviously that might be something. I know I've worked with people before too, and I'm like, you need to stop eating so much salt. Just weird. Like and I'm thinking, I'm going to go into this space of like, again, galactic, and really it just kind of hones it in on keep it simple. Let's do this, because once you do this, you're going to feel better. When you feel better, you're more open to the knowledge that you already have that maybe isn't available to you right now because you're not taking care of yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
My messages so far anyway have been less galactic and more super here and now, grounded and more embodied, for sure.
Yeah, which I really think is so important right now. It's interesting because I've seen it kind of shift. Like I don't know about you, but we're into the esoteric. Granted, you're into grounded and you're in the now as well, and so am I. I mean, I'm a yoga teacher too, and I believe in movement, and I teach Pilates, and I still do energy work to work on the physical. But there is this aspect, I feel like a year ago, where it was like all about our galactic heritage and all of this. And now it's like, all right, let's bring it back in and recognize that there's a lot going on in 3D.
Oh, yeah.
That we still have to integrate.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So it's a little bit about that. Be in your body, be grounded, feel what you're feeling, digest it.
Yeah, especially right now, like a lot of shadow stuff is coming up for people to really do something about and to face. And so we can't use, getting out of our body right now as much as we probably want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
We can't run away. We're isolated
Right.
in our bodies.
Right, exactly. Just face it.
Yeah. You've just got to deal with it. And I think too, that's important. You brought up that shadow work.
Mhm.
It's so funny. I mean, it's coming up again.
Yeah.
So what are some things, what are some examples of the shadow work that I know you and I have talked about this before
Mhm.
because we've both done a lot of shadow work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I tend to think of shadow work as the ego death. Again, it's like it's all the parts of us that come up that we might not want to look at, and so sometimes they can be things in our past, or they can be patterns of behavior that we've compartmentalized away, and we don't want to look at. And then something like a pandemic will make you look at them. So we're just a lot. That's what I mean by a lot of shadow work coming up right now is not that there's more of it, but there's just more time to look at it now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's true. And recognize that if you weren't done, it's back.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, I'm back. I'm still here, just hanging out,
Right.
hovering over your shoulder.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I laugh about it. It is serious stuff. I mean, there are people that have, but at the same time, we have to have fun with it
Yeah.
because the more we can have fun with it, the more we recognize that the shadow isn't, it's only as scary as we make it out to be.
Uh-huh. So true.
Again, it's
Yeah.
back to the beginning of our conversation, like the fear of speaking our truth.
Good point.
If we're feeling like we can't talk, and we build it up and we build it up and we build it up, and then sometimes we look at it and we go, oh, that big bad wolf isn't as bad as I thought it was.
Uh-huh.
I remember, it's like when we're kids and we remember a certain place being really, really scary, or a person being really, really big. And then we
Yeah.
see him and we're like, that person's only 5'2". I thought they were like 10 feet when I was a kid because they had that presence.
Right. Yep. That's a good point. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask also, I'm just going to hit pause for just a second.
Right. Yep.
I just wanted to kind of pop back on. I hit record again because I didn't realize we were so close on time, and there's so many more places we could go with this. Like, I would love to talk more about the Akashic Records. I'd love to go and delve into a little bit more of the movement aspect of it. And I was talking a little bit about me being introverted naturally. Like, I'm not naturally an extrovert, which is surprising to most people.
Yeah.
But it does take work for me to actually move forward and get out into a public space. Once I do and I interact, it's a lot of fun. And I do actually want to touch on that briefly because I think it's important. Sometimes we don't want to reach outside. Now I see where this was going. I was trying to figure out, why do I want to bring this up?
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't want to reach outside of ourselves and connect with therapists, for example. Like, I'm sure, Jess, that a lot of people are like, I don't want to talk, but I'm here because I have to be, or I should be. And ultimately, it's this human interaction that we are all here together on this planet. And if we weren't, I'm getting goosebumps, if we weren't supposed to interact with one another, we wouldn't be here together, forced. So we're forced in right now in isolation, but this is temporary. And this goes to show, for a lot of people, not everybody, how hard it is to be in isolation. So we were meant to work with one another, to have human contact, to listen and be able to hear and be able to speak. We wouldn't have all of these senses to be in touch with our sexuality, to be in touch with our willpower, our physical bodies. And so this is important for us to connect with one another. So right now, while we're experiencing this, we're being invited to reach out and connect in like the way that Jess and you and I are doing right now, or through sessions, or working with someone, maybe learning a new, how to paint. I mean, it could be something that simple. It's that interaction, it's learning, it's interacting, communicating.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And I'm saying this from as a natural introvert, even though sometimes I'm a butterfly, but most of the time I'm a caterpillar, or no, I'm in the cocoon. Like, oh, it's so warm and comfortable here. Do I really have to get out? So do you have any suggestions for anything you want to add to that? And then I want to talk a little bit about your workshop too. So
I think you just said that perfectly. Yeah, I agree. I'm an introvert as well. I have to recharge by myself.
yeah.
So, and maybe if you're in isolation with somebody that normally you'd get space from, this can be a little, we're in isolation, but I think a lot of us are actually forced to interact with people too right now.
We didn't even talk about that. That is such a good point. I have a client and she said, there's going to be two things that happen after this. I go, what? And she said, A, a lot of divorces.
Yep.
B, a lot of babies being born.
Yep, it's true.
It's going to be the Corona boomers.
Yep.
Yeah. So it is interesting learning how to, because we're all learning about ourselves, and we're learning more about our spouse or our partner or family member than maybe we wanted to know.
Definitely.
And so that could be a whole other video, which we might decide to do in general, because I think that's really an important subject. So it's important to recognize that not only are we going through this, but so is the person that we're stuck with, so to speak.
Right.
They're equally stuck with us.
Yep.
And even though we are meant to interact, we are our own unique individuals. And it is about finding that harmony and balance so that we are allowing other people, I think, to be who they are.
Yeah.
And not dictate how they need to act, how they need to handle what they're seeing, feeling, watching. It's challenging.
Oh yeah, it is.
So just really briefly, I wanted to share, because you've got this amazing workshop coming up, and I think it's a 6-week workshop.
It's 4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay.
Yep, I'll just say something really brief about it. It starts May 19th, and it's specifically for helpers and healers, and it does offer CEUs, continuing education credits, and but it's not just for people needing that. So, but if you identify as a helper or a healer in some capacity, this group is definitely a good option. It's all online, and we bridge embodiment and psychology and yoga therapy and breath work and shadow work. So there's a lot.
I love that. So it's 4 weeks. I know I looked at it. I'll have to go into it. I'll provide the link on my on this, and it's through Yothera. Is that who it's through? And is it done like through Zoom?
Yep.
Obviously. And if somebody can't make it to that particular, are you sending them, like, how does that work?
Yep. I mean,
let's say they can do 3 of the weeks, but they can't do. How many days a week is it?
It's just every Tuesday night from, Mountain Standard Time. It's from 6 to 7:30.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's doable.
Yeah, so it's an hour and a half a week. Yeah, so if people want a CEU credits, they'll get 6 hours of CEUs.
Okay. And what about for yoga teachers? I was just thinking about that.
Yep, a lot of yoga teachers like to do these workshops because they want more of the psychology and the yoga therapy part of it, and it's a bridge. Yothera is definitely a bridge between Eastern and Western healing modalities.
Yeah, so. I love that. Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm going to share that link. And there's a lot of good information on the Yothera website, but I think also on your Instagram. So I'll post all that, and it kind of goes into detail with what some of the stuff that you're going to be doing. But I just wanted to ask you to share your perspective of it. It looks like fun. So I'm just going to end on that note, because I have to run, not anywhere, but back on Zoom again, to run into another Zoom chat. But I'm so grateful that you took this time with us, Jess. And thank you. And did you have anything else you wanted to share? Or?
No, I'm just grateful for you. You're an amazing friend and human, so thank you.
Oh, I love you. That's so sweet. And I feel the same way about you. And we're grateful that you guys, anybody that's watched this, shared in this interaction. And you guys, this type of interaction, there's so many of us out there, light workers and healers, and we all have our own modalities. we all have our own, gosh, piece of the puzzle. And through I've got goosebumps, you know, we're through these types of interactions, through participating in each other's workshops, through sharing all of this, and actually talking about this. Again, that throat, we are, you know, for this particular, for us working together, we're feminine, you know, divine feminine, but we're also embodying that divine masculine energy in balance. And you guys, this is what it's all about. So, and of course, then taking that out to others who may not be aware that they can bridge these things, you know, or that they don't know how to talk about their emotions or what they're feeling. They don't even recognize that they're having these emotions or feelings, right?
Yeah.
So we're grateful to you, Jess, for being part of that group that can help people recognize that. Because if you don't feel, and you're not recognizing that you're feeling, there's definitely that's the most important step right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm going to sign off. You can stay there just for a second. And then love and light, guys. Namaste.